Okay, hello everybody. In your books or the paper that you've got nearby or the document that you're working on, just like to put the date, today's date. Obviously if you're not doing this on the 14th of January, just put the date that you are doing it on, but the title for today is Act 2, Scene 2 of Macbeth. Just pause the video, make sure you've got the date and title, and when you've done that, then you can play it again. So for the starter, I want you to find and write down 3 memorable quotes from Act 2, Scene 1. Remember, that's the dagger scene, which you've looked at over the last couple of lessons, I believe. Okay? Or you've certainly looked at recently. This is on page 17 of your anthology, in case you were wondering. So whether that's in front of you or on a computer, turn to page 17 to help you find and write down 3 memorable quotes about the dagger scene, or from the dagger scene. It could be about the dagger itself. When you pause it and when you've done that, play the video again. Okay, here's some that I got. For instance, is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle towards my hand? Come, let me clutch thee, and a dagger of the mind, a false creation. Okay, if you need to add those, then do that now. Pause the video. Okay, so what we're going to do is just a quote explosion to help you remember a little bit about the dagger scene, okay, and recap on that knowledge. So what I've done here is I found a quote, and it says, "Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat of oppressed brain?" And what I've done is I've zoomed in on particular individual words, because when we write about language, we don't just write about the whole quote. We zoom in and explore the little details which really make up the whole meaning of the overall meaning of the whole quote. Okay? So as you can see on the left hand side, I'm looking at dagger. I've explored how the noun dagger carries connotations of violence and death, foreshadowing that he will murder, or that Macbeth will murder King Duncan. The noun mind, moving around in a clockwise way. So the next one along, the noun mind implies that Macbeth believes he's hallucinating and that his mind is playing tricks on him. Perhaps he's very anxious. Next one, the abstract noun creation implies it could be even the witches who have created this dagger for Macbeth to see. Perhaps they are toying with him, perhaps they're playing with him, because maybe they've conjured this dagger for him to see. And the last one at the bottom, the pre-modification of heat oppressed suggests he is under a lot of stress about murdering Duncan, and he cannot make sense of things properly. You know, if something is oppressed, then it's under pressure, and he says that his brain's almost like it's under pressure from being so hot. Maybe he's overthinking about many things, really anxious about this and what he's going to do. Maybe it suggests that his mental health is deteriorating, which means getting worse. What I'd recommend doing is pausing this video and reading over those again, okay, so you can see the level of detail that we're looking for here. Okay, don't forget as well, when you do yours on the next slide, don't forget to identify the word type, okay, the language feature. You know, if it's a noun and you know actually what type of noun it might be. Or maybe it's pre-modification, maybe it's a metaphor that you're looking at, maybe it's an adjective that you're exploring. But just make sure that you do include that when you do yours, all right? And then you want a good bit of detail as well. Really try to consider what Macbeth might be feeling. So this is your turn. You're going to now choose one of your quotes from the starter and annotate, explode your quote in the same way I did, writing down your ideas. Zoom in on individual words, explore their connotations, which are ideas and feelings we could link to them, and consider what it could reveal to us about how Macbeth is feeling at that moment in time. So do go back to the starter in your book or on your sheet that you've written on. One of the quotes that you wrote down, now you're going to write that, and then you will explain and explode it in the same way, okay? Just like I had done on this slide, on the previous slide. Don't forget to look for your language features. Don't forget to zoom in on particular words, and don't forget to link it to how Macbeth is feeling and any ideas and feelings that we link with the words that you've zoomed in on. So like for instance, the noun dagger carries connotations and feelings and ideas of violence and destruction, doesn't it? So before we continue with the lesson, you're going to read this summary, okay? Pause the video and read through it in your own time. Okay. The main thing you need to know from this as well is that in Act 2, Scene 2, which is the next scene following on from the dagger scene, Lady Macbeth is really confident. Okay, she remarks on her boldness, meaning she says that what they've done in killing King Duncan is a great decision. She feels really confident. Okay, she can't understand how Macbeth could fail. Macbeth emerges, he comes from Duncan's room and his hands are covered in blood, and that the murder is done, so the king is now dead. He has killed the king, and he thinks he hears a voice in the darkness cry out, "Sleep no more, Macbeth does murder sleep." Lady Macbeth at first tries to steady her husband, but she becomes angry when she notices that he's forgotten to leave the daggers, so she becomes angry when she notices he's forgotten to leave the daggers with the sleeping guards so as to frame them, which means to make it look like they did it for Duncan's murder. He refuses to go back into the room, so she takes the daggers for the room herself, saying that she would be ashamed to be as cowardly as Macbeth. If you need to read over it again, just pause the video now. Okay. So there's a quick knowledge quiz and I want you to answer in full sentences. So pause the video, work through these questions. Number 3 you just need to put true or false. Number 4 you just need to finish off the sentence. Pause the video, have a go, and then get a purple pen ready to tick or change anything. Okay, so first one, Lady Macbeth is afraid that the guards woke up and stopped her husband from killing Duncan. Which character kills King Duncan? It's Macbeth. True or false? It's true that King Duncan respected Macbeth. Okay, that's from previous scenes and previous parts of the play. Finish the sentence, Macbeth's hands are covered in blood. And last but not least, Macbeth forgets to leave the daggers with the guards, so it looks like they murdered King Duncan. Remember, it makes his wife very angry, doesn't it? Okay, so the king is now dead. King Duncan is dead. Macbeth has murdered him. How might Macbeth feel? So list 5 ideas in full sentences for how Macbeth might feel after killing the king who trusted him in order to gain power for himself. Make sure to explain your ideas. So to justify your ideas is to explain your ideas. So I've put, for instance, he might feel anxious because he would have known that killing the king is a terrible crime and a sin too. It was considered a terrible, terrible crime to kill a king. So pause the video and list down 5 ideas for how Macbeth might feel after killing the king. Okay, so in Act 2, Scene 2, this is the beginning of the scene. We're going to match the annotations to the line from the play. So Lady Macbeth says, "That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. Hark, peace, it was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman, which gives the sternest good night. He is about it, the doors are open, and the surfeit grooms do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die." Macbeth comes in, and he says, "Who's there? What ho?" Lady Macbeth says, "Alack, I am afraid they have awaked, and it is not done, that the attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark, I laid their daggers ready, he could not miss them. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it." Pause the video and I want you to work through these here, okay? On the right hand side. So what you should have done is you should have linked these to particular moments in the play. So you could have had number 1 linked to line 1, number 2 linked to line 3, the owl that shrieked, number 3 also links to line 3, the fatal bellman, the bell rings signalling Duncan's death. Number 4, Lady Macbeth is afraid that the guards have woken up. And number 5, Lady Macbeth is afraid that King Duncan hasn't been killed. You could link that to line 11. Later in the scene, we're going to do the same task here. Macbeth tells his wife that he thought he heard something after he murdered King Duncan. So, methought I heard a voice cry, "Sleep no more, Macbeth does murder sleep, the innocent sleep, sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care. The death of each day's life, some labour's bath, balms of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast." Pause the video, have a read through this on the right here, and try and link up the numbers with the lines again. Okay, so you may have linked number 1 to, again, line 1. When Macbeth thinks he hears someone saying, "Macbeth does murder sleep." Number 2, you could have linked that really to line number 2, or, to be fair, line 2, 3, maybe even 4. Number 3 you can definitely link to line 3 and 4 again. Maybe even number 5 as well. And number 4, he is worried about that he won't be able to sleep after killing King Duncan. This was up to you, this one, but I think you could definitely link that again to number 1. And then in a full sentence answer this question. What might Shakespeare mean by Macbeth does murder sleep? What might that mean? Okay, so Macbeth does murder sleep. Macbeth is worried that he won't be able to sleep anymore because of what he's done to King Duncan. What I'd like you to do is pause the video in a second and write down for me, in bullet points, at least 5 ideas. So imagine if you couldn't sleep anymore, how might this make you feel? It might be that you feel very tired. You also might feel in a really bad mood, for instance. Okay? Pause the video now. So for instance, you might feel very tired, you might feel in a terrible mood, okay? So yeah, I've got some ideas here. Let's see if they match with yours. Extreme tiredness, madness, hallucinations, depression, anxiety, anger, and loss of control. All these things will come from Macbeth because now he's unable to sleep because of what he's done to King Duncan. So what you're going to do is you're going to think about how Macbeth reacts to killing King Duncan. Here's my example answer, which you can come back to. Crucially, Macbeth reacts to the killing of King Duncan by beginning to panic. He is worried about being unable to sleep anymore. Shakespeare illustrates this when Macbeth says he has, quote, murdered sleep. So obviously we're going to bring a quote in here. Okay, that's really important to bring a quote into our answers. And then to zoom in on one. Specifically, the verb murder conveys how he doesn't think he'll be able to sleep again after the terrible crime he has committed. Additionally, it could suggest that he is worried he may go mad as a result of what he has done and lose his sanity. At the time Shakespeare was writing, so some context is really important as well, it was considered a terrible sin to murder a king, and therefore Macbeth is rightly worried about what will happen to him. Therefore, Macbeth is clearly panicking about the crime he has committed and the effect it will have upon him. When we use context, so this bit, in our writing, so we refer to what life was like at the time, and the beliefs then, it's really important to link it through some language that we've used. So you're going to, in your quote, you're going to try and link some context through the particular words or quote that you've used. Okay. So here is your frame to begin some writing. Please work through all of these if you can. The hardest one, like I said, is probably this, in addition to making another idea there. So there are your 2 challenge sentences, but you must do as a minimum all of the other ones. Okay. Give it a go. Go back, skip the video back to mine if you need any help with it. But good luck. And that is today's lesson. Thank you for watching.